nothing beats the beautiful sound of a tube amp, right? Wrong. That was all using a digital modeler. That was admittedly playing the sounds of a tube amp. It was playing the sounds of a beautiful Rev D25 Joey Landreth edition. But in today's video, I wanted to talk about everything that you need to get into digital modeling. More and more players, like myself, have given up on having a traditional amplifier and are instead using these digital devices to get unlimited sounds in a tiny little box, as well as be able to take their sound and their rig virtually anywhere they need to go. Now, this is what you were just listening to. It is my modeler of choice. This is the Neural DSP Nano Cortex. There are many incredible options if you want to get into digital modeling, but the first thing that you need is a digital modeler. So I have used multiple units. This is, I think, my fourth that I've purchased. It's incredible. This is my favorite that I've used, but it's my favorite that I've used for my particular use case. So for example, the first one that got me into this was the Line 6 HX Stomp. It's an incredible sounding device. It has probably the most robust set of effects that you can get on a digital modeler. It's incredible. I ended up going to a Hot Tone Ampero Stomp Mini. Then I ended up trying out the Hot Tone Ampero Stomp 2. And then finally, after deciding that I really didn't care that much about effects and I don't use them that much, I ended up going with the Neural DSP Nano Cortex because the biggest thing that I care about is having a lush, big, beautiful sound. Now, there are many modelers. You can do research. There's hours of content online for you to check out what might be best for your needs. Those are just some that I have personal hands-on experience with. All of them will have slightly different features in what they do. Like, for example, this has significantly less effects than the HX Stomp or the Ampero Stomp. However, it has wonderful amp sounds. And this is all you need to have an incredible guitar amp sound at home, on stage, wherever you may be. You can even bring this in a car, power it via USB-C, and jam out in the back seat on a road trip, if that's something that sounds interesting to you. But the first thing that you need is a modeler, of course. Now, the second thing that you're going to need is at least one extra cable. So when you play the guitar and you plug into an amp, you only need one cable going from your guitar to your amp. If you're using a modeler, you need to plug your guitar into your modeler and then your modeler into something that sends sound. Lots of different ways to do that, and that actually brings me to the third thing that you need. That is going to be some form of speaker system to play it on. So at home, my wife and I live in a condo, and I don't want to terrorize our downstairs neighbors, so I don't use the PA speaker that I normally use for gigs. I use at home a pair of studio monitors. They're relatively cheap. I use the Edifier MR4s or M4. I don't remember what they're called. I'll put a photo of them right here. These then take sound from my audio interface, which you don't need. You could just plug your modeler straight into it. The interface is part of my teaching setup. That's a whole other thing. But this plays me back. It's actually pretty wonderful. I'm just surrounded by sound. I have two speakers around either side of my head whenever I'm playing, and it sounds great. It feels pretty good. And the reason that I went with these is that these are one of the cheapest sets of monitors you can get that have a flat frequency response. So when you listen to them, you hear exactly what the modeler sounds like. It doesn't color the sound. Now, when I'm playing live, I use a little 8-inch PA speaker. It's not an expensive PA speaker. I think it cost me about 199 Canadian dollars, which is nothing. So that is the Alto, I think it's called the TX308 is the one that I have. Photo here. And they actually have recently upgraded this since I bought the one that I use. So now you don't need to do what I do. But there is a fourth thing that you may need, which is a 1/4-inch to XLR adapter. Because this PA speaker only has an XLR input on the back. Now, the newer versions, if you were to buy it, the next generation of products, has a combo input. So it can take 1/4-inch cables or a standard guitar cable, or it can take an XLR cable, which obviously makes it a more flexible device. And that is, of course, a wonderful thing. I do not have that. So if I have to bring my rig to my own gig, if there's no house amp or there's no PA system for me to plug into, and I have to bring that, I have to bring that little adapter. It just plugs into the output of the modeler, and then you use an XLR cable to connect the two rather than that. You also may want to invest in a DI box if you play live a lot of the time, but I personally, well, actually, I do own a DI box. I just never bring it because if the venue doesn't have a DI box for you to run through, maybe don't play at that venue kind of deal. So that's what you need. Now, you might notice, well, Matt, you didn't mention playing through an FRFR speaker or an amp. And then this is where the wonderful thing is. So if you already have a tube amp, you can technically run through your tube amp. I don't do that because the whole reason I got into digital modeling was so that I didn't have to lug around an amp. For example, the PA speaker that I use, I think weighs about 15 pounds. The average tube amp or guitar amp weighs about 30 pounds. So it's significantly lighter, it's smaller, it's easier to bring. I don't own a car. I rent a car if I need to, or I mostly just commute on the transit system here. Significantly easier getting around with a light little PA speaker. If you have a tube amp or a digital amp, if it has an effects loop, you can bypass your amp and just use it to power your speaker basically. So if you plug into the effects loop, you're only hearing what the modeler says, not what the amp says. You don't get double coloration of your sound. That is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful way to do this. In addition to using a tube amp, you could use an FRFR speaker. Now, I am not a fan of FRFR speakers because essentially what they are is they're an expensive, very pleasing to look at. I will happily admit they got more mojo to them than a PA speaker. But we would be talking about an FRFR speaker. They're modeled to look like a guitar amp or a guitar cabinet. They tend to be more expensive, they tend to be more heavy, and they are basically a PA speaker packaged differently. So if you're super into the vibe of one and you want to have, some stage volume, which for those of you who aren't familiar, there's kind of stage volume is how loud amps are set on stage and at a live performance where things are going through front of house. Oftentimes, whenever I'm playing, I'm playing a gig where I'm running through the house sound system, I will just use whatever monitoring system they have there, and that will be my sound. I don't need the amp behind me. It doesn't weird me out. Some people really like that, so you can have that set up as well. But the FRFR thing, for me, I'm always like, well, these are twice as expensive as the same sound of a thing in a smaller, more convenient to take on transit package. So that is why I have opted for the PA speaker route rather than opting for the FRFR side. So there is basically all of the gear that you need to do it. Now, as a really quick explanation of some other things with the modeler that might freak people out, there are often amps built into these modelers. Of course, you're going to model an amp. They tend to be set up, if it's a model, it will interact somewhat similar to an amp. The knobs will move just the way that you did before. If you're using a capture, it will be significantly less flexible than a model, but in my experience, it will sound and respond a little bit more like an amp, which is very nice when you're actually playing through it, that is. So those are kind of the differentiations there. If you're playing through a capture, you're playing through a static capture of a rig at one point in time. If you're playing a model, it's kind of a flexible thing you can tweak as you see fit. Now, the big confusing part is once you get into cab sims and IRs. Now, cab simulations are great. A lot of these devices now have very tweakable things, so you can pretend that you're moving microphones and the frequency response of your modeler will shift as if you were using those microphones. That is super cool. It can be really confusing to deal with as someone getting new into it, and even as someone who's recorded a bunch of guitars the good old-fashioned way with mics on a cabinet, I find it to be a lot of messing around for maybe not the world's biggest gain. So one thing that's very popular these days is IRs, both free and paid ones. And basically what an IR is it's a simulation of what a guitar amp cabinet with 1 to 2 particular microphones sounds like at that given time. If you are looking for these, by far the best IRs that I have found in my experience are the York Audio IRs. They sound absolutely incredible, and they really do just take out a lot of the mess. So I'm a big fan of a combination of a Shure SM57 and a Royer 121. The SM57 is a very cheap, very affordable microphone that has been used to mic guitar amps for years, and then the Royer 121 is an incredibly expensive microphone that costs, I don't know, it's something like 1,200 Canadian dollars, I think. Like, it's money. And the reason that that's such a popular combination is that the Royer is a ribbon microphone, sounds a little bit dark but very earthy and good, whereas the Shure SM57 tends to be maybe a little bit more crispy and mid-heavy. So the two of those sounds mixed together is incredible. But you can purchase IRs, you can look up York Audio again. I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. It's like $20. You get a crap ton of little things that you can tweak and customize. Well, I guess you can't customize the IR, but you can tweak it. So the IR would go where the cab block would go if you decided to go that route. And again, if you're just getting into the space, I would argue it's maybe worth it to pick up a pack of those just to spare yourself some work. But that's pretty much everything you need to get started with digital modeling. I know it can seem scary, abandoning the guitar amp, but I haven't had a real amp for about 5 years. I've been using these digital modelers, and my God, do they ever sound incredible. So if I missed something, please let me know in the comments. If you have questions about any of the stuff I talked about here, please feel free to leave it in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe. It really helps me out more than you can know. If you're looking to take a guitar lesson with me, there's a link to get in touch with me down in the description. I'd love to work with you on whatever's troubling you on the guitar. If you're looking for a way to support me and what I'm up to, you can check out my Patreon page, linked down in the description. It's a great way to get some more in-depth educational content from me that I can go into in a 10 to 15 minute YouTube video. Speaking of educational content, I also have my ebooks and my video courses linked down below. It's a great way to get some more in-depth educational content from me that I can go into in a 10 to 15 minute YouTube video. And last but not least, I have new videos coming out every single week, so I hope I'll see you in the next one. And until I do, I'll wish you a wonderful day, and I hope you have some fun playing the guitar.